Hey Daniel,
Adam, what's going on?
dude, just another great day to be alive. Wake up every day with a couple goals on your to-do list, and you just tackle them every day. So like having a great day. What about you?
Checking boxes. That's it. That's
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 it,
what having a good
man.
day is about.
Well, the funnest part about the day is RTM. I don't know if you guys have heard about RTM. It's a big thing. It's a big thing, and it can make a big difference in your practice from a revenue perspective, not just from a revenue perspective, but like a patient engagement perspective, patient compliance. Like we can get better outcomes. There's a lot of research behind it. People have been slow to implement, but it's starting to gain traction. Um, but there's some compliance concerns, right? So we got to like check ourselves to make sure we're doing it the right way. So that way, when we get paid, we can keep the money, right? And so today we got Daniel Hirsch, the number one compliance guy on the internet. He's going to tell us all about RTM, remote therapeutic monitoring for private practices. So, Daniel, train us, man. Teach us what we need to know.
Thank you, Adam. Yep. Thanks again for having me. Um, I want to start by saying you're totally right. RTM, remote therapeutic monitoring, it's not a secret. It's been around for a while now.
Hmm.
Um, you probably know. I mean, there's people that charge for this information, but in this setting in the PT profession, we need less barriers, right? So we don't need more toll collectors on accessing this kind of information. So if you're still paying for this, no excuse. We're on the clock. We're going to fly through this really fantastic topic, RTM. I love
Let's
it.
do it.
For PTs, this is year 4. So I'm proud to say that I've been preaching, what was it? Goodness, jumping into RTM. It's finally gaining momentum. Finally,
Hmm.
finally.
Hmm.
Also, if you notice, I mean, you were kind of talking about before we record, some of the loudest voices in at least my compliance arena, they only became interested once they kind of like had a financial incentive to do so. So
Totally.
take that for what it's worth. But RTM 2026 looks very different than 2022 version. And thank goodness. The problem with the original rollout, of course, was like the like the kryptonite that affects most PTs, and that's math. I don't know if you experience this,
Oh, yeah,
but
yeah.
like we avoid it like it's the plague. And counting, monitoring days over like a 30-day period versus over a calendar month,
Right.
it was just too much for the normal physical therapy. We couldn't handle it. So I want to reframe RTM from what you probably heard to a new perspective. There's been a lot. There's been a lot of talking about RTM to kind of help owners make a stronger decision for the growth of a company. And so, Adam, I went back and I reread some of my blogs and watched some of my webinars on RTM over the past couple of years. And it
Hmm.
was good. It was good content. It made sense. But practices were like really limited by the poor technology. And you need that to be able to bill for this. So think of it this way. When you control the clock, you're able to determine how your schedule looks, what services to include or bill. Also, you need to relax on vacation. All these important variables, they impact us in and outside of the clinic. So I think what people need to understand is RTM allows you to take back your time. You haven't really heard this from an RTM perspective, but I want people to understand that. You decide when you send that email, that text, that electronic communication with the patient, you decide. And who will help you accomplish this on your team, that's really up to you. So I feel like the perspective needs to change. And maybe it's a staff member looking maybe for like extra work, or maybe it's a third party vendor who will manage everything. It could be a hybrid approach, lots of ways. But ultimately, you need to decide how to control the time for the service. And that's why RTM is very unique. And we need to really accept this opportunity. I think it's a gift of clock management, in my opinion. As a coach, I'm always telling people, right, you got to control the clock. So
Hmm.
this is not hypothetical. We also know that Medicare and other payers, they pay for this. So
Hmm.
it's kind of like a winning formula for like, you get better outcomes, you get better retention, you get all those boxes that you want to check off. This does that for you. I'm not saying it's the end all be all. It's not going to make everything, all problems go away, but let me run you through what RTM includes. So, a few numbers. At like the 40,000 foot view, RTM has got to be supplied and provided by a qualified device. And the data needs to be transmitted. That's the whole concept, right, of what this is.
Hmm.
Basically, you need to onboard patients. You got to supply them with the device, and then you have to monitor and interpret the progress. So, this, this is like the 21st century version of like, remember those VHI stick figures that used to copy and you'd have to
Hmm.
like hand them out to your patients? I guess that's just me being old, but like there's a whole
Yeah.
binder of that stuff. You have to go find, half of them were missing, they were numbered. It was terrible. So this is just a really great version of that.
Hmm.
I'll give a shout out. I listened to Stevie Cohen on last week. He was at the Graham sessions. I think it was Jimmy McKay interviewing him or something like that,
Hmm.
some live thing. And he basically gave the idea that when you're explaining this to patients at the onset, it just needs to be routine and part of the PT experience at your practice. Not everybody could participate, right? Not everyone is appropriate for every treatment option. But when you reframe the benefit as something that's simply necessary to succeed in therapy, that's really the goal. So you have a couple codes. There's not many. Most people are not billing all the codes, right? We're not respiratory therapists. So basically, you have a couple of codes. You have 98975. That's your setup. Then you have your 98977 for monitoring, 98980 and 81. So those are the first 20 minutes and then the second 20 minutes of data collection and monitoring and interpretation. So stop and think. You control this time of how and when, but I guess this was complicated and it had a really high threshold, so to speak, because you didn't, let's say you didn't capture all 16 data points, right?
Mm.
Within a certain component or the full 20 minutes, you got nothing. So people were like kind of ticked off, right? Like it was an escalation of commitment almost where you have to keep investing and you're like, but I'm relying on someone else for that paycheck. That's very hard to commit to. But in 2026, you now get paid the same exact amount, which I think is fantastic. But you can receive payment if you only obtain 10 to 19 minutes or
Mm.
2 to 15 days of data collection instead of the all or none, what I was talking about, right?
Hmm.
So that means you have more flexibility for not being perfect without really carrying the risk of wasting your time. Um, a lot of vendors offer this. They offer creative solutions, integration, really great things. Each one has like a very distinct personality. So you should pick the one that really matches your company and what your culture is all about. So there's, it's just not go out there and find the biggest. You need to find the one that fits uh, basically how your staff interact. And this whole conversation really, Adam, is about taking back control of your time. And I think RTM is a very good answer for it. Um, there's also, nowadays you hear a lot of grievances about fee schedules and reimbursement rates and reports out about fatigue and burnout and all that stuff. I understand that, but if you put two to two together, this is a really smart route to take after you've been given a 4 year runway. So, in my opinion,
Mm.
if you're finally starting, congratulations. And if you're already doing it, you're probably taking a deep sigh and going, wow, this is fantastic that I could get more for not being perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna shout out to Stephen Cohen. He owns Sarah Health. He's a sponsor of the PPO club, so I gotta shout him out. He's also a really cool guy, super passionate about this topic, so check him out. We actually use them as well. Um, but I mean, I like the thing that attracted me to RTM was obviously as a business owner, like the financial opportunity, right? So it's like we're always measuring that revenue per visit. How do we squeak that up an extra dollar or two here and there? Um, And when you step back and you do the math and you kind of zoom out, like when you think it's like what, it's like 40 or $50 per patient per month or something along, something like that. But when you step back and do the math and you kind of like look at like, man, if we had 30 or 40% enrolled in this, it makes a real financial difference when you kind of extrapolate it over 12 months.
It's not a
And
small number, it's
it's
big.
it's a legitimate number, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it'll offset a lot of expense. And also for a very minimal,
Even if you're giving a percentage off the top, even if you're
correct.
outsourcing 100%, it's a very large number.
It's not a lot of it's some setup energy and there's some training involved and obviously you have to be actively involved in that process, but a lot of things are automated and like you mentioned, like that math problem is a lot of that is kind of solved for you with use of technology now. So it's easy to implement from my perspective. Um, and it also is really cool because you can create bonus programs around that. I don't know if that gets into compliance issues or not, but like I've heard of companies building programs around RTM. So that's kind of what I'm kind of like my limited, ignorant perspective of what RTM is from a business perspective. I'd love to hear you tell me where you see people get in trouble. What do you feel like might be important to, hey, make sure you got these one or two check boxes checked before you just start charging people for it? Like, what are some of the things that we need to have in mind from a compliance perspective?
Yeah, sure. So a lot of the vendors, the tools that are available, they do the math for you and they basically prompt you. They tell you what to do, right? So they're like, "Here you go." Where people run into trouble is again, this is a universal problem with specific insurances where there's a copay or a deductible, and
Mm,
sometimes you're paying, right, you're applying things to maybe the wrong date or a non-date visit, and then it's triggering something else. So you have to use some thought. You can't just randomly start tagging codes because again, this is a different concept of how you capture billing. Usually we're very physical, right? The person's in
right.
front of you, you deliver the service, and then you build a code. This is not. This is you finally bank it and then you apply it. So you have to be thoughtful when you're doing this. Where people get into trouble from this is again very rare, but from a documentation standpoint, you have to be able to retrieve that data into your EMR. So
Mm,
when there is a documentation request, it has to live somewhere that's secure, but then you eventually, if there is a request, you have to be able to extract that and put it into your documentation. So it's not really a problem. You just have to be cognizant about that. Um, and then also from, I think you were kind of alluding to, this is a fantastic thing that we usually hear people complaining about of, oh, how do I charge for a reviewing home exercise program?
mm.
This is literally the answer where you're saying you want continuity of care. You want, again, by the way, they have to be actively participating in a plan of care. So that's also one of the key components. You can't discharge a patient and then be like, congratulations, you're doing RTM. It doesn't work that way. They have to still be active.
Forever.
Well, there could be a step down program or something.
Sure.
But the idea is that RTM specifically, there can only be one. So you can't be having your snowbirds up in New Jersey doing RTM and then they go down to Florida and they're also doing an RTM. They
Mhm.
can't be simultaneous. So the idea is that it has to be that open plan of care that is allowing for the billing to be taking place. But the idea is that you really want to make sure that they understand what's involved. You don't want people to be surprised. You don't want, and again, this is a classic compliance issue where you think you're communicating and you're not communicating to the patient. So as long as you're communicating clearly at the onset, it will absolutely pay dividends. And I've seen companies do really, really well with this over the years.
Nice, nice. And there's real value there. I think that's important to understand,
Even conservatively, I think it's Adam is something like 150 per episode of care.
yeah.
So that's conservative numbers.
Right. And so so if you extrapolate that over what, 12 visits, I don't know what the math is, maybe $13 or whatever that is. I don't know. So it's like there's real value financial and also for the patient. Like I've never, me personally, when I have a few businesses and when we think about the businesses that do well are usually the ones that usually have higher touch points with their customers, right? They're more actively involved and engaged just at a higher frequency. And so they feel heard, they feel supported. You catch little issues a little quicker, you're more responsive, and you just
You're
get a
you're
better
dialed in with
customer.
the patient.
You're dialed in with the patient, right? And that usually increases lifetime value of the patient. They refer people to you. So there's a lot of business, there's real value there for the patient. They're gonna get better outcomes, assuming that they actually utilize the service. Like they're probably gonna get better outcomes. And here's the thing: Medicare's done its research. You know what I mean? Like they're not just rolling this out to see what happens. Like there's a reason why I'm assuming that they're raising reimbursement rates or they're making it easier to get paid this year because it seems like obviously they're moving in that direction because they're seeing costs go down for them, or they see a future where costs might go down
A
for them.
hundred percent. And we know everyone's going to follow whatever Medicare
For
does.
sure.
So
By
this
the
is
way,
going to be something where,
United Healthcare
yeah,
pays
go
for it
ahead.
as well, which is
Yeah.
transformative, right? That's amazing.
Yeah. People are going to be looking back at this going, you were right. Why did we jump on this? There's no reason not to. Again, usually in the first 12 months, people are like, it's the Wild West. You don't know what's going on. But this is proven. We know it works. And this is clearly where everyone else is going. And it's kind of like, it's a shame if you don't. That's really,
Yeah.
you kind of have to almost feel bad for people that are not jumping into it.
Yeah, just do it, man. Just do it. It's a skill. Take a couple Saturdays and Sundays off. Read, learn it, and then
And
learn
there's
it.
options. There's no
Right.
one right way. You got to look at your staff and say, hey, what is my staff capable of doing?
Totally.
And then you could kind of figure that out.
Cool, man. Well, I think this is episode 3 or 4. I can't really quite remember, but we're doing 5 action-packed 15-minute segments on compliance. Don't really remember what the next week's. Actually, I think we're taking a week off, but the next episode, I'm not really sure what it is, but I know it's going to be good.
It's gonna be good. I forget what it is too,
All right.
but we'll
So,
make it interesting.
yeah. If you're watching on the Facebook group, check out the comments. I'm gonna have some information about Daniel and what he does and how he helps people. If you're listening on the podcast, check out the show notes. All that information is there too. Daniel, where can they find you?
At risk and compliance analytics.com on our website. And it's very easy. We have everything from a compliance perspective. When it comes to outpatient PT, we thought of everything.
Sounds good, man. We'll see you next week.
All right. Thanks, Adam.